All right, everyone, stream is up and live. I'm gonna see if it works and test the audio here for a second. All right, test. See how far we're behind. All right, test. See how far we're behind. All right, test. Okay, looks good. All right, and all right, everyone. It's getting late this evening. We're got to get our stream in for the day. Today we're going to be working on building that Go server we outlined in our plan. So we're going to try to get through a few points of creating a Go HTTP server from scratch, add some logging, add some configuration, and probably call it a night. This video, if you're just tuning in, is really a video geared towards existing web developers and who want to see maybe how another developer does things. We're going to be trying to make a Go server from scratch that we can use in a production and maybe even a high traffic situation. I have a future project I'm going to plan to use the code for. Typically what I would do when starting a project like this, I would go copy some skeleton projects I already have laying around, but we're going to make the skeleton project from scratch. I'll talk through the decisions of why doing certain things, code organizations, and things like that. So, really these videos are just that. They're not really a tutorial. It's just something to have reference with and to look at and see what you like. So, all right, so let's get right on it tonight. So, we're going to build the web server tonight. Let's first do some project organizations and get the Go server up. So, I've got a application here. Let's go to presentation mode, but I still want to see the sidebar and the terminal. So we're doing this on a Linux server, but it could be a Mac or even in a VM on a Windows machine. Turn down that volume just a bit on the music. So, project organization, you can go look how to start a Go project, but we're going to be using Go mod, and we're not going to put it in the old Go path way it used to go 5-10 years ago. So Go mod init, I believe, and yeah, there's some help. And we'll just do lancehorizon.com/skeleton. We can change this later if we want to. All right, creating a new skeleton Go mod. What this did is put this Go mod file here. We're going to use version Go 1.8 because that's what's installed in this machine. I think 1.9 might be out right now, but 1.8 is what I have. And we might be changing this later between our run times when we deploy it, but that's further down the road. When you create a Go application, you're going to need a main.go file to be the main entry point to your app. However, this repository here, this YouTube stream app, is probably going to have a web server. It's going to have perhaps an API server, perhaps a worker involved with it. So we're going to be building several different binaries in the future and compiling it up. So if you just don't want to worry about that, you can put a main.go right in the root of your application. And let's see, here's main Go, and anytime you have a Go package main and you have a func main, and we can do my .print println, and we'll say hello world. Simple Go application. Notice this IDE for me. I'm using, what am I using here? I'm using Goland. I like Goland quite a bit. Good license for it. My own money, so I use enough. Makes it life easier renaming. Can even use the run tools in it, but we won't be using too many of the fancy features just for this application, at least in the beginning. And that's all you need to have a Go program work. So we have a main entry point. Go, but like I said, we're going to be building binaries and shipping them off. And if you don't know that about Go, that's one of the attractions of the packaging is instead of having to put your libraries, your asset files, your node modules, your vendor files for Rails apps all together on your Docker image or your container that you're going to run it in, you build all of it. You get one binary, if you, depending on how you build it, but all the Go files will compile to one file. You might have assets you might keep separately outside the Go file. We'll put some templates. I usually put my templates inside the main file, but we'll talk about that there when we start doing templates on the HTTP server. In fact, let me go ahead and write that down. So what we're going to do. Let's put templating maybe over here. Templating. Now back to the file organization. I'm going to move this main file here, and I'm going to put it in a directory. Quite often you see Go projects with a command directory, and this is where you're going to stick all of your command files that will be your targets that you can compile against. So right now we might have an API server, we might have a web server, like I said. So let's just create one called web server, and we'll move that main file into the web server directory. And then if we want to compile it, or go run it, go run command web server, and there's our hello world. It's not a web server yet, but it's in the web server directory. If we wanted to build it, oops, build. And what that did, it created a file called web server, which is the same name as this directory here. And then when we're to run this binary file, we get the hello world. All right, we'll remove that binary. So that's a little bit about file organization I'm going to start with here. Now, we're going to have shared libraries. We're going to have some logging and configuration utilities pretty quickly here. And I typically will put them in a lib or something like that. My daughter's recording me. I can say hi over there. It is a live stream. That's another reason I'm doing these live, is I don't have to edit them later. And you get to see all the mistakes, all the mispronunciations, all the stammers. And it is getting late at night for me here, so I gotta get this done before I get too sleepy tonight. All right, let's finish off, just get the web server saying hello world. So building web servers in Go is part of its core features. There's a HTTP server package built in already. We're going to use that. We will use some routing libraries, but pretty much we'll be using all standard stuff. So I have some notes here over on the side that I'm going to reference. All right, I don't like to do a whole lot inside main because main is hard to test, and I like to keep my main file as small and tight as possible. Maybe only pull things out of the environment and pass them into, or along those lines. So we're going to not call hello world here, but we're going to have our run function. So this is what the program will do. We'll add some error handling and just basically error handling in main. It has one responsibility to call run and then log the errors and send the appropriate signals if it dies. So we're going to do a run function. It's going to return an error. If you've never programmed in Go, error is built-in type. And we'll return nil just for the compiler's happy right now. And we are going to move this here. And we're going to capture the output of run into a variable called error. And we're going to check if it's nil, but you can combine this into the assignment and the check in one line. And then we're going to call format. Let's send it to standard error. I usually send them if we have an error, we want to write up standard error. I also like writing my logs to standard error too, but error. And we can say something like run. Log should be lowercase error. And we'll put a string, I believe. Let's see here. Yeah. Don't forget the carriage return. And we'll put out the error. So this will call the string method on the error if error is not nil. And then print it out. And of course, if our program errors out, we want to exit with code 1. I did not create this pattern. forget the name of the guys who did, but I saw this a few years ago. I like that. Just nice and simple main. We might add some additional things here if main requires some, if the run requires some things to work and we want to test run, and we can do dependency injection there. A lot of times I'll just make main just this. Run might do a little bit more setup and pass those along. So let's just make sure our code still works. Go run command web server. All right, hello world still works fine. And this might be a good place to save. Git status, git add. I may change there. The command folder and get the go mod file. Git commit add hello world. All right. Now we have our hello world running. We want to add the HTTP server parts now. Let's see which way to approach this. Well, let's just get hello world running in HTTP. How's that? So instead of returning nil, we'll return HTTP, and we have a listen and serve, and the address we're going to listen on. Let's just do port 9000 at the moment, and we're not going to have a server handler, but what we'll do is we'll register. This is just temporary. We'll register some global handlers that will, read what we need for us. Let's see here. Oh, that's a different server. That's the future. So an HTTP package, we're gonna call the handle. I'll do handle func. Why not? And on this route, we're gonna call a function, and we can just do it inline for now just to see it. We're going to throw this code away anyway. So the signature here that auto-filled for me was basically because handle func needs to implement a piece of code that's going to implement the handler interface and return a response writer function, and that's what this interface looks like. So usually I like to make these W and R a little shorter. And let's just fprint F right out to the writer, and we'll do another. We'll just move our hello world here. Hello world. Character return. All right, and we can get rid of that one. Maybe we'll put something here just as us. If we don't put anything here, the program won't output anything. It will be listening on port 9000, but we'll have no idea that it's trying to. Go run. Where's that run command? So it doesn't show anything's happening here. If I go grab a browser, go up into a window here, and we look at localhost 9000, we see our hello world. We'll leave that open. So not too exciting, very basic. Couple things to note though: we didn't get any logging, we didn't get any messaging, and in theory, if you have a really simple app, this is great. Just put a few routes in here, register your functions, and away you go. But while this is great for a hello world demo, it's not really going to give us something we can use in production. So we're going to take a few steps beyond this. And we're going to we're going to create a server which will register as a handler here. So func, we're going to return a new thing. So it's going to return an HTTP handler, and we're going to call new server from here, and we're going to we'll use the default router for Muxer right here. Muxer I just think of as a router, and we're going to, let's take essentially this piece of code here, and our mux, and we're going to call handle function that. when we're done here, we need to return Muxer. And there we go. Nothing's really changed. Go run it again. Go back to Firefox, refresh. It's good. Hello world. In fact, we can change the message. Hello world 2. Control C, reload. All right. And this file was going to get, or this function I should say, is going to get a little longer. I'm going to move it into its own file called server.go. And we might actually add testing to the server at some point. So this we'll call new server here. We just keep the main nice and tight. Only things that are really designed to go around the larger bit of work. All right, so got a file structure. We're starting to build things up, but we got a ways to go. We could, I'm trying to think what's the best next step here. Let's go to my planning. Look at that. Go server. All right. File organization, logging. All right. So again, this is a skeleton we're going to use in production environments, App Engine, Kubernetes environments. We want to have logging that those environments accept and can parse. And if we're writing a high-speed server, we want a logging library which doesn't have a lot of allocations and garbage collection required. So I'm going to use Zerolog. Now, to prevent those garbage collections and allocations, Zerolog does types passed into it. So it's got a kind of an interesting interface. You can also use Zap. There's another popular one to go. I've experimented with it years ago, but haven't used it for a while. And I've been happy with Zerolog for quite a while. So Zerolog will have its default log. Let's see here. Well, let's just say what we're going to do here. So log.info. Let's see if it can find Zerolog for me. No, it did not find it. So I can drop in Zerolog. And my IDE will take care of it for me. It will sync the dependency, but also I can do a go mod tidy. And actually, I got rid of Zerolog. It tidied it up for me because I wasn't using it. That's funny. Let's go grab that URL again from their website. There we go. Oh. All right, and now we can do log.info.message. Hello. Hello. There we go. Found the module, installed it. And eventually the IDE will update. Might need to do a little synchronization on its own. Pros and cons of IDEs. All right, we got a message, hello. Zerolog by default uses JSON formatting. Here's the timestamp it looks like. And it's better than nothing at the moment. So, but we want to add a little information of what we're trying to do. So, and to make developers' lives easier also. Listening on HTTP:// localhost 9000. Look at that. And the terminal there is smart, and you can click on this and we'll load our 9000. So very handy for development, and it tells us what's going on. Notice I didn't get any type of logging from the HTTP server though of what was being requested. And we'll add that as a piece of middleware into our stack. Maybe tonight, maybe not. Additional information about this logging, you can configure it. So let's see. Zerolog has, you can change the time format. And so the time is now in just Epic, Unix time. And what I really like about Zerolog is you can register the, not that one, let's see here. We can write to the global logger and we can add this caller. And we can add a console.writer for the output, which will give us some pretty things. So now we've lost the JSON, which we don't want to lose in production, but for right now, for web development, I think this is great. And just these few pieces of configuration, and we'll just go ahead and log config, and we'll put that there. Oops. We're going to do more with log config later, but I don't want to get too far ahead of myself and be setting multiple things up before we need them. Because if I do everything, then I'll have to explain the reasons I'm doing them, and then it will seem esoteric and disconnected from what we're trying to achieve. So all we're trying to achieve right now is a web server that says hello world with some decent logging, and then maybe we'll add some configuration in and call it a night. So back to the server now, and we want to log each request. So every time a request happens, I see maybe some messaging here. That would be very nice. One way we can do that is introduce it as a piece of middleware. So every time the HTTP is handling a response, a request and a response, we can send information out. So let's look at our server. We're using the standard Muxer, and we're going to continue to use a standard Muxer for this main route, but maybe I want to log this route. Let's see. Let's go look at some notes here off screen. Let's see. Add server. Now, we don't have to use the Muxer that comes from HTTP, the default one. I'm going to change back to it, but just for right now, before we get ahead to vhosts and things like that, let's just change this Muxer over to Chai. Pronounce that. That's a good question. Let's see. Let's see. Yeah, Chai. Not Chia. So. Yeah, Chai would be like a chai latte AI, and then Chi is like yeah, Chi is a letter of the Greek alphabet, and Chi is also in Chinese. All right, yeah, Chi. So never thought about actually trying to pronounce it sometimes. So we're gonna actually instead of this Muxer, we're going to use this Muxer, Chi Muxer. Checking the website. Looks like they got several versions. We're going to head and bring in. So now we've added the just swapped out the Muxer or the router, and I think everything will still work. Let's go back to the terminal. All right. Let's see. Is it in the Firefox? There we go. Instead of just keep saying hello world, let's maybe put in fprint. Yeah, we'll do fprintf again. We can add a time dot now dot, what is that, format. And I always have to look up the format for Go. It's like 2016. Sure, we'll just. I guess we just do a straight string. Not sure why not. Get the format. placeholder. All right, I'll go check that later. All right. So we have the Qi router. Now, what is the Qi router going to allow us to do? If you look at the Qi's website, let's go. Actually, I haven't looked at the website in a while. Maybe let's go check that out. Yeah, that's what I meant. Lightweight, yes. Let's see. Yep, new router. Oh, they have a middleware locker. Ooh, what does that do? Let's get that. Let's add their middleware. All right. Let's see what that does. Hey, look at that. Pretty log messages. Tells us how fast they were served in, how many bytes were delivered, response code, IP address of the client. Yay. There's also several other very nice loggers. We will be eventually delivering this. We'll put a request ID onto the context, and you can go read what these do. Look at this, got a context. If there's a request ID on the header, these request IDs might be injected by the load balancer or some type of application state. We get added to the context, and then that middleware calls the next. We'll call the next function or next middleware that gets to serving it. That's what I do really like about Goland is I can click right into new packages. Real IP is going to get the real IP for the request, and if there is any type of clients or headers for X forwarded for, that will be on the IP. That will get logged instead of the recover. It does what it says. It calls from Panics. So if you have a bug in your web server and you call Panic, it actually doesn't crash the server. So keep that in mind if you're building APIs, or if you want your server to crash, figure that out. It'll return a 500 and request ID if it's provided. So logger, let's see. I don't like to use add no cache headers, and usually the apps I build fast enough in cache, but this one we might want to take off depending on what we're doing. Obviously, if we're doing a lot of data that can be cached, caching is useful. Let's see, what else does GRouter have on their website? Request real IP. That sounds pretty. Did I get real IP? Yeah, I did. Logger, a recover. Yeah, maybe I should put logger first. And okay, that's a timeout. I like that one. I like the 30-second timeout, even though my app should never take this long, but and here's some examples of some route endpoints. Get, put, delete. We have a context. Ooh, that's new. Use an article context. We'll have to look into that. But all right, let's see what it looks like when we run this. It's now localhost. Did I lose my? Oh, I bet I did. Back on my main file. Did I not call log config? I did not. All right, there we go. Tells me what line of code it was on too, especially like that. Here's the name of my host name, and this looks like a request ID. That's pretty cool. Let's go ahead and commit this. A little bit more window here. I like all those files. See the string, the checklist, main, modify. Yeah, let's just add everything. All right. So got quite a bit done there. We got some logging. We've got HTTP handling. We put a lot of the default Qi middleware in there. Got some value out of those. The server's pretty sweet. Of course, our server needs to do something, and this is where your architecture styles and choices start to diverge from just copy pasting off GitHub. So what we're going to do is let's first talk about configuration. We need to pass database connection strings, private keys for services into our app. How do you want to pass them? Well, a good choice to start with, if you want to just pull something out of the box, would be, is it Cobra? Or is it the other Snake one? No, Cobra is a command line one, and what is this? It's also the SPF, guys. I remember the name of the other package. Viper. And they have their Viper package is nice, and they've got their own YouTube videos, which are going to be great. It's a little older, from 2014. Viper Golang. So doing file configurations, Viper, it's quite hefty. You can do anything you want to it. Like I said, it's JSON, TOML, YAML, HCL. You can do env, .env files. It can reload configs. It does a lot for you. I'm not going to use Viper, but this is a decent choice out there. And it's setting defaults, etc., etc. A couple reasons. I don't set defaults. I like everything to be explicit and to be locked in there. All right. I'll talk more about explicit later when we're building out this configuration more in depth. All right, let's say our hello world function needs to make a database connection. Well, maybe that's too complicated at first. We'll do database connection next time. Let's say it needs to connect to another service, which we need an API key for, and pull some data from there. So we just need that API. My point is, we'll need the API key inside this function pattern. If all you need is one API key for your entire application, you could use you could get it from the environment, and that might be fine. I don't like doing a lot of configuration through environmental variables because it gets unorganized and messy in a large application. But hey, you got a small application, you have straightforward configurations. Use an env var. So get key, maybe it's some type of GitHub API key, and my key is whatever, and we'll just let's put the time in here too. It's there we go, and we'll put like a message. There we go. All right, let's run this server. Now what's going to happen is when I run this API key is not one of my env vars. I hope. I'll go check that in the window real quick. Let's make a let's call it just fake. There we go. Fake API key. So when I run the server and we open back up the terminal, my key is empty because this function will return a string. The default value for a string is empty, so it's going to call it empty. You could say, well, let's have a default API key or default value. I do not recommend that. But let's make it explicit that you need API key. So I'd had error checking in here and fail if it wasn't available. And that seems to indicate me that this key is part of the environment, so the application should fail when it starts at it's missing a key. So there we go. Let's go back to our main. Here's this run. We get some key. If key is empty, then we're going to go ahead and we could return a new error. Since we have error handling here. Error dot. No. Boy, I'm trying to blank that around. Well, I'm thinking I don't know how to return error right now. Must be late. Well, when in doubt, go Google it. Lord. Yeah, I'm gonna say, oh, errors.new. Errors.new, yes. Yeah. Yeah, errors. Is errors in the package. Yeah. Return errors.new. Which error you want? Good choice. What about package errors? I think it's. Let's do this. Built-in errors. Undefined key. Oh, can't compile. Put a little something back now. All right, so we're missing our API key. So we're gonna go stick it right here. And now we have our key running. The application expects it. So we just add the environment variable here. And if you have a handful of these, this would get ugly pretty quick. One is okay. So I would recommend using durenv. So I believe I have already installed this machine. So env-rc, we'll make a file here. Yes, and yes, durenv is already hooked up into my bash shell. So like, you can't do that. Let's just go ahead and export this. Sure, hey. Get that plugin for it even. Sure, why not? What's this do? Cute. Alright. And it still let me know that I haven't allowed it yet. And allow. And it lets me know what it's going to set. And now if I do the go run, I don't need the fake API key here. I just go run. Server, and it's registered in the environment for the shell. But we've got the fake API key out here in main. Here's this key. We really, if this key is a dependency for the server, we should pass it in here. And the ID's been like, hey, what do you want to do with that? I'm going to add that string as a first parameter here. We'll call it API key. And then we can reference this key right here. So we get run. We'll load up. My key is test. If we go to VRC, test 1, 2, 3, save, Control C. I haven't allowed it yet, so you can run the allow command. Go back to the browser, refresh. Oops, I didn't run it. Oops. Server first, browser, test 1, 2, 3. Now, I don't like using a lot of environmental variables for configuration. I like using some sometimes, but if the configuration is a secret, like an API key or a database connection string, You really need to put those in a secret manager. You can do secret managers for your ENVs in production, but of course on apps where there are hundreds of configuration variables, especially for connecting to providers for different things, so their credentials or server names, just on and on and on it goes. So I don't like too many ENV variables. We'll have a few because our providers that we're going to host us on are expecting us to listen to things like certain port numbers or stage names, things about the environment, but not necessarily application configuration. So we are going to separate that out, and we will create a new structure to hang that environment on. So let me go look at some notes real quick. Let's see. All right, so we're going to configs. Let's see. We're going to create a type of config var. Now, if your application needs to vary the configurations when it runs, or depending on the configuration, if you have significant changes to behavior based upon the configuration, you might want to use the configuration as a variable you inject everywhere, but that means you're carrying around this configuration state a lot of places in code. Hopefully your configs don't change too often. My database connection strings don't change. My API keys I have with vendors don't change. Since it's a variable that doesn't change and a lot of places need to reference it, I don't have a problem with using configs as a global var. So we'll go ahead and create a global variable to hold the configuration and define a structure that's going to be in there, and then our application can grab it when it needs it. Now, again, we'll move this around to a library later. But for now, we'll just put it in a config.go file. And let's see, anything interesting here? No, so let's go ahead and create our global file. So var config conf. Now we can make this a small config for now because we're not going to reference it outside the package main, but it'll need to be publicly addressable later. And we're going to just define a type of a structure that represents this config, and we're going to put our database. We're going to export it because we'll need to reference it from other packages. It might be a string and things like that. So we'll have database connections in here. Right now we just have this fake IP. Fake. Let's call it some service. I can type. Getting late. API key. So this variable here, config, which is not defined in any functions, so it'll be a package level variable, can be called from anywhere else. Now we need to make sure this config gets loaded up right away. Some developers might use init. I don't like using init because I can't really test them as easy, and they always get loaded. And maybe I want to load the config with test values in a testing framework. So I'm going to use a function to load config, and then I can set different variables at different times. So it's been a while since I've done this from scratch, so bear with me. So load config is going to, let's see. Let's read a JSON file or a YAML file. I like YAML better than JSON since I can comment it, or a TOML file. We'll put that. This is what a library like Viper could do for you. But we'll keep it simple here. So load config. Make sure we call load config. And load config must succeed. So we could panic, but we could, if error, we can call load config, if error is not equal to nil. Okay. So I'm going to expect load config to return an error. And yeah, signatures are happy. Not doing anything yet. Let's do YAML. So we're going to put a YAML file, put in our root for now. Let's do it this way. Let's config.yaml. And we need to call the YAML library, and we're going to unmarshal. Is there a built-in YAML processor? YAML. Let's see, I know of one. Let's see what Google says. Golang YAML. Let's see, we have YAML support for Go YAML. Let's see, fairly recent. There's v3. Look at that. So go get YAML v3. And so we want to import it. I'll just put it in there. The Go mod download. What is it? Go mod download. It's not in Tennessee, so I gotta. Let's just do it like. Import some URL. Oh, no. And that going. YAML dot unmarshal. We gotta read some files. Does it have a file reader? Just gotta read it first. Marshal, make a file interface. Unmarshal some bytes of data. Where do they get their data from here? That's just an example. They have an unmarshal file. They have an unmarshal file. No, I don't think so. OS doc. Read file. Oh yeah. Is there a must read file? All right. We'll do the full version, but what was the name of the file? Config.yaml. So read file. I'll hard code this in. Config.yaml. We're gonna expect that. And some mode. No, just name string bytes error. Okay. Bytes equals bytes, and an error equals this. If error is not equal to nil, then return error. At this point too, I might want to add a little extra logging. So log.error. Let's give it a little more context. Message. And And now we got the bytes, and now we'll marshal that bytes onto the global variable config. Send the reference to config over there, and we want to return unmarshal because unmarshal returns an error. Yeah. All right. Let's call something else for now. So run. All right, open config YAML, no such file, cannot read config.yaml. So let's see. Something's missing here from this. Oh, our log is not configured quite the way I like it. Because I read my config file before I set up my log correctly. Oh, we don't need this API key thing here anymore. And new server won't need a key. It's just going to reference the global instance of config. Yeah, or we could pass it in. I'll think about that later. No config here. Anyway, config dot some API key. Can I open config 2? Go back to that main. I want to configure the log first. Because now when I run my error, hey look, it tells me where the error was at. I can just click on it, control click, and I go right to the spot where the message was. Very nice. All right. Okay, config. All right. Now my YAML file is empty, but it got loaded. And if we were to check the web server, I'm sure it's going to be empty value for that test. Now we need to actually add this to the YAML file. Now, what was the key name I gave it? Config. Let's see. I called it some service API key. Go look at a YAML example real fast. Again, it's often not writing these things by hand. A, B. Interesting. They've got annotations here where you can say what key is renamed to C, D, and some helpers on there. Interesting. A is a struct, B is a struct. Let's go to YAML file. Let's see if caps matches. No, it did not read it. Oh, I don't like that. I want some errors if it can't read it. Unrecognized value test. Spell it correctly. I don't like unrecognized values in my YAML file. Well, let's see if we can figure that out. Real picky. What am I missing here? Version 3, does it have a way to, here's the comp. I'm going to set this type. Let's do a little debugging here. We'll just do it with print statements. Let's read their documentation. Let's marshal and see what we get back here. Come on, fingers. And then let's do log.debug. The byte says bytes. YAML file is this string of things. Send that message. Yeah, all lowercase. That's interesting. First off. I really want to fix these unrecognized values, so. All right, now if we go check the web server, all right, there's that test key. Okay. Let's put this here. Configuration to do handle unrecognized keys in YAML file. You might be saying to yourself, Lance, what's the big deal about unrecognized values? Just spell them right. Well, we're going to make mistakes, and can't tell you how many times I've had a project where someone fat fingers something and you don't see it, and then you're chasing your tail for a few hours. So if there's a configuration that's not recognized, we're going to throw an error. So, but I'll figure out to that off camera and then show you later on the next episode. So it's getting late already right now. It's 11:30 my time. Thank you for tuning in. If you've stayed to the end, thank you so much. And we'll see you on the next episode. Good night.